Part 1. The Box Under the Stairs. The morning Grandma Rosie's things arrived, Maya Calloway was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to decide whether to eat her soggy cereal or pour it down the drain when her mom wasn't looking. It was a Saturday in October, which meant the sky outside was the color of old dishwater, and the leaves on the maple tree in the front yard had turned deep, angry red. Maya had been in a deep, angry red kind of mood herself for the past 3 weeks, ever since the phone call came, ever since her mother had sat her down on the couch and taken both her hands and said, in that voice that sounds like it's trying very hard not to crack, "Maya, sweetheart, Grandma Rosie has passed away." Maya was 10 years old, and she had never lost anyone before. She hadn't known it would feel so heavy, like someone had quietly sewn rocks into the lining of her coat. She wore it everywhere. To school, to bed, to the kitchen table, staring at soggy cereal. Maya, her little brother, Oliver, came thundering down the stairs like a herd of small elephants. He was 7 and seemed to have no idea that you could go anywhere in a house without using full galloping speed. "The truck is here. The big brown truck. Mom said Grandma's boxes are coming, and I get to help carry them." "You're 7, Maya said. "You can't carry boxes." "I can *** small * boxes." Oliver was already at the window, pressing his nose against the glass, his breath making a foggy circle. "There's 2 men, and one of them has a really long beard. Do you think it's a wizard?" "It's a moving man." "Wizards can be moving men, too." Maya didn't have an answer for that, so she carried her cereal bowl to the sink, poured it down the drain while her mom was in the hallway signing forms, and went to see what arrived. There were 11 boxes in total. Most of them were labeled in her mother's handwriting. Asterisk books, KITCHEN, BEDROOM, fragile asterisk. But one of them had no label at all. It was smaller than the rest, about the size of a microwave, and it was wrapped in brown paper that had been tied with actual string, like a present from 100 years ago. Maya's mother, whose name was Claire, and who had her own version of the rocks in the coat feeling these days, carried most of the boxes into the spare room. But she set the small brown paper one on the kitchen counter without opening it. "What's that one?" Maya asked. Her mom looked at it for a long moment. "Your grandmother left instructions," she said. "She said that box was for you. For me just for you." She was very specific. Her mom touched the string gently, the way you touch something that belongs to someone who isn't there anymore. She said you'd know what to do with what's inside. Maya looked at the box. The box looked back at her, or seemed to. She wasn't sure how a box could seem to look at you, but this one managed it. "I'll open it later," Maya said. "Okay," said her mom, and went back to carrying boxes. She opened it that night. She sat cross-legged on her bed with the box in her lap, and she worked at the string with careful fingers until the knot came undone. The brown paper fell away. Inside was a book. Not just any book. It was enormous, nearly as wide as her lap, and its cover was made of dark reddish-brown leather that had gone soft and crinkled with age, like the skin on the back of someone's grandmother's hand. There was no title on the cover. Just the initials *RAC, asterisk tooled into the leather, in curving letters. Rosie Annabelle Calloway, Grandma Rosie's name. Maya opened it carefully. The first page said, in Grandma Rosie's round, looping handwriting, "This is a recipe book. But it is not only a recipe book. Asterisk. Asterisk, every recipe in these pages was cooked at an important moment in our family's story. Cook them with care, with love, and with all your attention, and you will understand what I mean. This book belongs to Maya now, because Maya has always paid attention to the right things with all my love. Forever and always, Grandma Rosie." Maya read the note twice. Then she read it a third time. She turned the page. The second page had a recipe. The handwriting was older, shakier, less round, and the ink had faded to a pale sepia, like the color of old photographs. At the top of the page, in careful letters, it said, "Hot cocoa for a cold night. Mama's recipe. And if you make this on the right kind of evening, when the rain is tapping the window, and you are feeling alone, you will not feel alone any more." Maya read through the recipe. It was simple. Milk, cocoa powder, sugar, a tiny pinch of salt, a splash of vanilla. At the bottom, the old handwriting had added, "Don't rush it. Stir slowly, in one direction only, and think about the person who made it for you." Maya looked at her bedroom window. Rain was tapping against it. She took the book to the kitchen. Part 2. The first recipe. Her mother was on the couch with a cup of tea, not really watching the television, which was showing a documentary about penguins. Oliver was already asleep. He could fall asleep anywhere, in any position, like a very small cat. "Can I make hot cocoa?" Maya asked. Her mom looked up. Something in her face softened. The tightness around her eyes eased a little. "Of course you can. The cocoa powder is in the second cabinet, behind the oatmeal." Maya found it. She found the milk. She found the sugar and the salt and the vanilla, and she set them all out on the counter the way she had seen Grandma Rosie set out ingredients, like an army lined up before a battle. Everything in its place. She poured the milk into a small saucepan and turned the heat to medium-low. The recipe said to heat it slowly. She watched the little bubbles form around the edge of the pan. Tiny, trembling things, not quite ready to boil. Stir slowly, in one direction only. She stirred clockwise. The cocoa powder dissolved into the milk in slow brown swirls. "Think about the person who made it for you." Maya thought about Grandma Rosie. She thought about Grandma Rosie's kitchen, which always smelled like cinnamon and coffee and something floral that Maya could never quite name. She thought about the way Grandma Rosie laughed, like she'd been caught off guard by something delightful, a sudden bright sound that made everyone in the room smile, whether they meant to or not. She thought about the last time she had seen her. The summer visit, July, when the days were long and golden, and Maya had helped Grandma Rosie make jam from the plums in her backyard. Grandma Rosie had been slower then, moving more carefully, but her eyes had been exactly as sharp and bright as always. "You're a natural in the kitchen, Maya," she had said, spooning hot jam into glass jars. "Do you know why?" "Why?" Maya had asked. "Because you pay attention." Grandma Rosie had tapped the side of her temple. "Most people rush through cooking. They want the end result without the journey. But cooking is all about the journey. Every stir, every smell, every little bubble in the pot, it all matters. It's all part of the story." Maya had nodded, not quite understanding then. She understood a little better now. She poured the cocoa into 2 mugs, one for herself and one for her mom, and carried them to the living room. Her mom looked at the mugs, then up at Maya's face. "Oh, sweetheart," she said quietly. "I made it from Grandma's recipe book," Maya said, "the one she left me." Her mom took a mug in both hands and breathed in the steam. For just a moment, something passed across her face. A memory, maybe, or the feeling of a memory. Her eyes got bright. She made this for me, her mom said softly, when I was about your age. When I was having a hard week at school and I came home feeling terrible. What did she do? She made me this. Her mom smiled. A small, real smile. She didn't ask me a lot of questions. She just sat with me and we drank our cocoa, and she told me stories about when she was a girl. She took a sip. Her eyes went wide. Maya, this tastes asterisk exactly asterisk like hers. Maya tried hers. It did. She couldn't explain why it should. It was the same cocoa powder they always used, the same milk from the same fridge. But somehow it was different. It was warm in a way that went past the stomach. It tasted like something that had been saved up for a long time and finally let out. Mom, Maya said, can you tell me one of the stories? The ones Grandma told you. And her mom, who hadn't smiled much in 3 weeks, put her feet up on the couch and told her daughter the story of a little girl who had grown up on a farm in Vermont with 4 sisters and a dog named Biscuit, and who had learned to cook from her own mother on a wood-burning stove in a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon and coffee and lavender. Lavender, Maya thought. That was the floral smell. They sat there until well past Maya's bedtime, and neither of them mentioned the rocks in their coats once. Part 3. The Pages of the Past. Over the following week, Maya began to read the recipe book from front to back. She did not read it the way she read regular books, all at once, staying up late, devouring pages. She read it slowly, the way you might read a letter that you wanted to last, a few pages a day, stopping to think. What she discovered was this. The recipe book was not just a collection of recipes. It was a history. Every recipe came with a story, sometimes just a sentence or two written in the margin, sometimes a full paragraph. Some were in Grandma Rosie's familiar handwriting. Some were in other hands entirely, loopier, sharper, older. Pages that had been torn from other books and tucked inside. Pages written on different kinds of paper. A recipe for apple cake on what appeared to be the back of a grocery list from 1953. The book went back generations. There were recipes from great-great-grandma Agnes, who had come to America from Ireland in 1921 with a single suitcase and a determination that, according to the notes in the book, could have bent iron. Agnes had written down a recipe for potato soup that had apparently been the only warm meal she had for the first 3 months in her new country, shared in a crowded boarding house in Boston with 6 other immigrant women who became her first friends. There was a recipe for sweet potato pie from Grandma Rosie's grandmother on the other side of the family, great-great-grandma Dorothea, who had lived in Georgia and who, the notes said, had made this pie every Thanksgiving for 53 years without a single year's gap. There was a recipe for a soldier's bread pudding, written on paper so thin it was almost transparent, from a great-great-uncle named James who had been stationed somewhere in France during a long-ago war and had written home about the French baker who had taught him the recipe and who, he wrote, had shown me more generosity in one afternoon than I had seen in 6 months of fighting. Every recipe was a doorway. Maya began to cook them. Not all at once, and not all correctly. There were some she couldn't make because she was 10, and the ingredients were too complicated, or the steps involved equipment she didn't have. But the simpler ones she made, one by one, on weekend mornings or after school, carefully following the old handwritten instructions. And every time she cooked one, something happened. Not something magical, exactly. Not in the way of stories where pots glow and books fly through the air. It was more subtle than that. It was that the cooking made things come alive. The smells and the warmth of the kitchen and the slow, careful work of following someone else's recipe. It all opened something up, like a window in a room that had been closed. Stories came out. Part 4. Oliver asks questions. Oliver discovered the book on a Tuesday. Maya had left it on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs to change after school, and when she came back down, Oliver was sitting on the counter, which he was absolutely not allowed to do, with the book open on his lap, squinting at the pages. "Hey," Maya said, "that's mine." "There's a recipe in here for something called victory cake," Oliver said, not moving. "What's victory cake?" Maya climbed on the counter beside him, also absolutely not allowed, and looked over his shoulder. She found the page. The handwriting on this one was neat and small and precise, the handwriting of someone who had learned to write at a time when every letter was considered important. Victory cake. August 1945. We made this on the day the war ended. I used our entire month's ration of sugar in one go, and I did not feel a single moment of regret about it. The war ended and someone used all their sugar to make a cake, Maya explained. Oliver thought about this. "That makes sense," he said. "If I was stuck without sugar for a long time, and then the war ended, I would probably use a lot of sugar too." "Yeah. Can we make it?" Maya looked at the recipe. It was a layer cake with buttercream frosting. It looked complicated, but not impossible. "Maybe on the weekend," Maya said. "If Mom helps." Oliver slid off the counter. "Maya," he said, in a different kind of voice. Quieter, more careful. Oliver was loud most of the time, but he had this other gear, a still and serious one, that surprised people when it appeared. "Do you think Grandma Rosie can see us when we cook her recipes?" Maya was quiet for a moment. She thought about it honestly, the way she always tried to think about hard questions. "I don't know," she said, "but I think—" She paused. "I think the recipes are sort of like letters she wrote us before she went, so that she could still tell us things, even though she's gone. Does that make sense?" Oliver nodded. This seemed to satisfy him. He jumped down from the counter. "We should definitely make the victory cake," he said, and went to watch television at his usual full galloping speed. Part 5. The Saturday Baking Project. The following Saturday, Maya asked her mother to help with the victory cake. It took some convincing. Her mother had been spending a lot of Saturdays lately on the couch with a cup of tea and that look in her eyes, the faraway look, the one that meant she was somewhere else. Maya had read about grief in a book she'd found in the school library. The book said grief came in waves, and that the waves were different for everyone. Her mother's waves, Maya had noticed, tended to come on weekend mornings. "I don't know if I'm up for a project today," her mom said. "I'll do most of it," Maya said. "I just need someone taller to reach the top shelf for the stand mixer." Her mom almost smiled. "Is that the only reason?" "And maybe someone to make sure I don't accidentally put in too much baking powder. Because I did that once and the muffins were like volcanoes." That got a real smile. Small and tired, but real. "Okay," her mom said. "Let me put on clothes." 3 people in a kitchen is a complicated thing, because kitchens are generally designed for 1.5. Oliver took it upon himself to be in charge of ingredient measurement, which he did with tremendous seriousness using the kitchen scale, narrating every gram as he measured it the way a sports commentator might narrate a particularly exciting play. 250 grams of flour, and it looks like we're right on target, folks. Maya read the recipe aloud and managed the mixing. Her mom, who had apparently spent more time in this kitchen than Maya had ever fully noticed, moved around them both with an ease that looked like choreography, pulling pans from the right cabinets on the first try, knowing without asking where the vanilla extract was kept, testing the oven temperature with the flat of her hand, held near the door the way Maya had seen Grandma Rosie do. "You learned that from her," Maya said, watching. "Testing the oven like that." Her mom looked at her hand, then at Maya, then smiled in a way that was slightly startled, like she hadn't quite realized it herself. "I suppose I did. I used to watch her do it when I was a girl." She paused. "She said it was the only reliable way. That ovens lie about their temperature." "Is that true?" "Completely true. Your oven's too hot by about 15 degrees. "How do you know?" because everything you bake comes out slightly darker on the bottom. Maya filed this away. She was building up a collection of kitchen knowledge, stacking it like books, or maybe like recipes, like pages in the book she'd inherited. It occurred to her that this was how knowledge moved through families, not always in school or from textbooks, often in kitchens while doing ordinary things with your hands. The cake came out beautifully. It was 3 layers of golden sponge, slightly uneven in a way that made it look handmade and loved. The buttercream frosting was the color of cream and tasted, Oliver announced, like cloud but better. They sat at the kitchen table to eat it, just the 3 of them, on a gray October Saturday. Grandma Rosie's note says the original was made by someone named Ida, Maya said, reading from the book. Her next-door neighbor. It says Ida ran into the street and danced a jig with her husband Charles when they heard the news. And then she came and knocked on our door and asked if I had any eggs, because she intended to bake a cake that was worthy of the occasion. Her mom laughed, a real laugh, sudden and clear. That sounds exactly like the kind of person I would like. There's more. Maya kept reading. I gave her the eggs, and she brought over half the cake when it was done, and we sat on the front porch and ate it while the bells from the church on the corner rang and rang, and it seemed to me that perhaps everything was going to be all right after all. Silence. The good kind. The kind that has something in it. That's the thing about hard times, Maya's mom said quietly. There's always someone who knocks on the door with cake. Oliver, who had been on his second slice, looked up. Are we the cake people or the door people? What do you mean? Like, are we the people who make the cake, or are we the people who the cake gets brought to? Maya's mom considered this seriously. Both, I think. You have to be both at different times. Oliver nodded. I want to be the cake person more often, he decided, because then you get to eat more cake. Part 6. The recipe that made Dad cry. Maya's father, Patrick, worked long hours. He was a structural engineer, which meant he spent most of his time making sure buildings didn't fall down, which Maya had always thought sounded like exactly the right job for a dad. He was tall and quiet in a way that wasn't unfriendly, more like he was always listening carefully, waiting for the right moment to say something worth saying. He had loved Grandma Rosie deeply. He had been the one who drove to the hospital when the phone call came. He had handled all the arrangements, the paperwork, the moving of boxes, all the practical heavy lifting that no one wants to do, but someone must. And now, 3 weeks later, he went to work and came home and ate dinner and helped with homework and watched the news, and he seemed fine in a way that sometimes means not fine at all. Maya noticed things. She'd always been a noticer. She found the recipe by accident. She was flipping through the book looking for something to make for Oliver's school lunch. He had requested something interesting in his lunchbox, which was a lot of pressure, when she came across a page near the back with a recipe that was written in 2 different handwritings. The first handwriting was Grandma Rosie's. Newer, more recent, the handwriting Maya recognized. The second was someone else's. Strong, slanted, slightly impatient-looking. The recipe was for shepherd's pie, and the note at the top said, Patrick's shepherd's pie, as taught to him by Grandma Rosie, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from Agnes, who brought it from Ireland. Patrick made this for Claire on their 3rd date, in his tiny apartment kitchen. He was so nervous he added twice the amount of rosemary by mistake, and it was the best shepherd's pie either of them had ever tasted. He has been making it for her ever since. Every winter, on the first cold night of the year, the recipe is his. Maya looked at the second handwriting, the strong, slanted one. She looked at it for a long time. Then she went to find her dad. He was in the study, reading something on his computer with the look of concentration he got when the numbers weren't adding up. Maya knocked on the doorframe. "Hey, Bug." He used his nickname for her, a leftover from when she was 4 and had been convinced she wanted to study insects. "What's up?" Maya held out the recipe book, open to the shepherd's pie page. Her dad went very still. He reached out and took the book, and Maya watched his face change, watched it go through several things very quickly, like a film being fast-forwarded. He read the note. He looked at the second column of handwriting, his own handwriting, from years and years ago, and something shifted behind his eyes. "She kept this," he said. It wasn't really to Maya. It was more like he'd just remembered something he had forgotten he'd lost. "Did you write the recipe in there?" Maya asked. "She asked me to." His voice was different, thicker, quieter. "After the third date, I told her where the recipe came from, that her mom had taught me, that it came from Agnes, and she said she wanted to put it in the book. Said she was keeping a record of all the family recipes." He turned a page, turned it back. "I forgot she'd done this." Maya sat on the arm of the chair beside him. "Can you teach me to make it?" Her dad looked at her. His eyes were bright. "Yeah," he said. "I think I can do that." They made shepherd's pie the following Friday. It took 2 hours, and they used too much rosemary, just like the story said, and it was absolutely perfect. Oliver ate 2 enormous servings and didn't even narrate them. Maya's mom sat at the kitchen table and watched her husband and daughter move around the kitchen together, and the look on her face was something Maya wanted to keep in a jar somewhere. Something warm and full and almost too much to look at directly, like the sun through autumn leaves. They ate at the kitchen table, with all 4 chairs filled. Maya thought, this is it. This is what Grandma Rosie meant, not the magic of recipes, not secret ingredients or mysterious powers. The magic was this: the gathering. The doing of something with your hands in a room with other people. The way food made people sit down and stop moving and look at each other. That was the real recipe in the book. Part 7. The Storm and the Bread. November came, and with it a storm. The forecast had called for rain, but delivered something altogether more dramatic. A gray, howling, slanted rain kind of storm that sent leaves flying in circles and knocked the recycling bin off the porch 3 times. School was canceled. The power flickered twice and then stayed on, which felt like a small victory. Maya's dad was working from home. Her mom had a video call that she was trying to conduct from the bedroom with the door shut, while Oliver knocked on it every 4 minutes with urgent but debatable questions like, "Mom, do wolves dream?" And "Mom, if a submarine got launched from a catapult, how far would it go?" Maya had the kitchen to herself. She opened the book to a recipe she had been saving. It was near the middle of the book, on pages that felt different from the others, smoother, older, yellowed to the color of old ivory. The handwriting was the oldest in the book, small and careful, with the elaborate loops of someone who had been taught penmanship very seriously. "Agnes's soda bread. I have been making this since I was 6 years old. My mother taught me. Her mother taught her. I don't know how far back it goes, but I imagine as long as there have been cold days and flour and hungry people. This is what you make when things are hard, not because it fixes anything, it doesn't, but because the making of it is something you can do, and sometimes that is enough." Maya read through the recipe. Soda bread was simpler than she'd expected. Flour, baking soda, salt, buttermilk. No yeast, no kneading for hours. You mixed it, you shaped it, you put it in the oven. But Agnes had added notes in the margins, little instruction points in an even tinier version of her careful handwriting. Don't overmix. It makes the bread tough. This is true of many things. Too much working ruins them. Score the top with a cross. This lets the heat into the center. My mother said it was also to let the fairies out, but I think the heat theory is more reliable. The bread is done when it sounds hollow when you tap the bottom. You will know the sound when you hear it. Trust yourself. Maya tied back her hair and got to work. She found buttermilk in the back of the fridge. Her mother had bought it for something last week and never used it, which felt like a kind of small miracle. She measured the flour carefully. She mixed the baking soda and salt with a fork. Outside, the storm threw rain against the kitchen window with particular enthusiasm, as though it had a personal grudge against the glass. Maya mixed the buttermilk into the flour mixture with a fork, working quickly but not over-mixing. Too much working ruins them until a rough, shaggy dough came together in the bowl. She turned it out onto a floured counter and shaped it gently into a round. Then she scored the top with a cross. She held her breath as she made the cuts, deep, straight lines that opened the dough like a flower beginning to open. Something about the gesture felt old and important, like she was doing something that had been done on every cold day for 150 years. In kitchens all the way back to Ireland, in kitchens she had never seen, by hand she had never held. She put it in the oven. 35 minutes later, the kitchen smelled extraordinary. Not just good, extraordinary. A deep, warm, earthy smell that seemed to reach into the farthest corners of the house and pull everyone toward the kitchen, the way the smell of a fire might draw you in from the cold. Oliver appeared first, abandoning his rain day project of building a fort that extended the full length of the hallway. He stood in the kitchen doorway and sniffed dramatically. What is that? Soda bread. It smells like. Oliver searched for the word. It smells like safety. Maya looked at him. That's a strange thing to say. Well, it does. Oliver climbed on the counter to peer through the oven window. Can I have some when it's done? Yes, but you have to wait 10 minutes after I take it out. WHY. Because if you cut it too soon, all the steam escapes and it goes gummy inside. Oliver climbed back down and stared at the oven with intense concentration, as though he could make the 10 minutes pass faster by watching. Maya's dad appeared in the doorway, still holding his phone but no longer looking at it. Did you make bread? Soda bread. Agnes's recipe. Her dad blinked. Agnes. Great-great-grandma Agnes. He came into the kitchen and stood beside Maya. He looked at the oven, then at the recipe book open on the counter, then at Maya. Rosie used to make this, he said quietly. When your mom was a little girl, every winter. I know. Maya had read the notes carefully. There's a note in the book that says Mom used to ask for it whenever she had a bad day at school. Her dad was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I should tell you something. Maya looked up. I was the one who introduced your mom to your grandmother, he said. He leaned against the counter. I know that sounds backward. She was my mom's best friend's daughter. Your grandmother and your great-grandmother were close. But Claire didn't know her well yet when we started dating. I brought Claire to Sunday dinner and Rosie made this bread. He paused. She always said that was when she knew she wanted to be part of our family. Not the dinner, the bread. She said the smell of it was the smell of being home somewhere. Maya thought about this. So Grandma Rosie's bread kind of brought them together. In a way, her dad smiled. Your grandmother had a way of making people feel like they belonged. I don't know how she did it. She just made you feel like you were where you were supposed to be. The oven timer went off. Maya took out the bread. She set it on the wire rack. She waited 10 minutes. Oliver watched the clock with the intensity of an athlete, and then she cut it into thick slices and buttered them generously and brought them to the kitchen table. Her mom had finished her call and appeared in the kitchen doorway still holding her laptop, and she stopped completely when she saw the bread. "Maya," she said, "you made Agnes's soda bread." Her mom put down the laptop and came to the table and sat down, and she picked up a piece of the bread, and she held it for a moment without eating it, just breathing in the steam that rose from it. "I haven't smelled this since I was 9 years old," she said, "and it smells exactly the same." They sat around the kitchen table while the storm raged outside, the four of them, with a plate of buttered soda bread in the middle, and they talked, really talked, the way you sometimes don't manage to talk because everyone is always rushing off somewhere. They told stories. They laughed. Oliver asked about Agnes and whether she was brave, and their dad said Agnes had been one of the bravest people in their whole family history because she had come to a strange country with nothing and had built everything from scratch. "She must have been lonely," Oliver said very seriously. "She must have been," their mom agreed. "But she made friends, and she made bread, and eventually she had a family." "Did the friends eat the bread?" "I imagine they did." Oliver nodded. "That's how you make friends," he said. "You give them food." Part 8. A letter in the back of the book. In the last week of November, Maya made her way to the final pages of the recipe book. She had been slower on these last sections, partly because she didn't want the book to end, and partly because she sensed she was getting to something important. The pages were newer here, Grandma Rosie's own recipes, in her own familiar handwriting, alongside clippings from magazines and pages torn from cooking notebooks. But on the very last page, not a recipe, just a single folded piece of paper tucked into the back cover, there was a letter. It was addressed to Maya, in Grandma Rosie's handwriting. The ink was fresh and blue, not faded like the older pages. She had written this recently. Maya's hands shook slightly as she unfolded it. "My dearest Maya, if you have reached this page, then you have cooked your way through this book, or near enough to it. I hoped you would. I always knew you would. I want to tell you something I have been thinking about for a long time, because I believe it is important, and because I believe you are old enough to understand it and young enough to still use it. Our family is not unusual. We are not remarkable in the ways that history books tend to record. We have not discovered new lands or won great battles or invented important things. We are ordinary people who have lived ordinary lives in ordinary places. But here is what I have learned in 81 years of living. Asterisk ordinary is not a small thing. Every recipe in this book was made by someone who got up in the morning when getting up was hard. Someone who built a fire or turned on a stove or measured out flour with hands that had been working all day and were tired. They cooked because people needed to eat. They cooked because it was Tuesday. They cooked because someone they loved was having a hard day, or because something good had happened and it deserved to be celebrated, or because they needed to do something with their hands while the world was difficult. They passed the recipes on because they wanted the people who came after them to have something. A thread to hold on to. A way of saying, I was here. I loved these people. I made this for them on this day. Now you can make it too, Maya. Family is not only the people who are in the house with you right now. Family is everyone who came before, stretching back as far as you can imagine, and everyone who will come after. You are the middle of a very long sentence. You are both the child of everything that happened before you and the beginning of everything that will happen after us. That is a big thing to be. But it is also a wonderful thing when I am gone, and by the time you read this, I will be. I don't want you to feel only the weight of losing me. I want you to feel something else too, that you carry me with you. That every recipe you make, every story you tell, every time you sit down at a table with people you love, I will be there in some way, not the sad kind of there. The warm kind. Add your own recipes. Write your own stories in the margins. When you cook something important, when something good happens, or something hard, or something that you want to remember, write it down. The book has blank pages at the back. Fill them. You are the next keeper of this book. You are not the last. I love you more than all the recipes in the world. Maya sat on her bed for a long time after reading the letter. She read it 3 times. She cried a little, not the heavy, rocks in the coat kind of crying, but the other kind, the kind that feels like something releasing, like a window being opened. Then she went downstairs. Her family was in the kitchen. Her dad was making tea. Her mom was at the counter chopping vegetables for dinner. Oliver was lying on the kitchen floor reading a comic book, which was his version of being in the kitchen without being in the way. Maya sat at the kitchen table. She opened the recipe book to the blank pages at the back. She picked up a pen. She wrote hot cocoa for a rainy night, Maya's version, adapted from Agnes's daughter Margaret's recipe, as taught to Grandma Rosie, as taught to Mom, as taught to me, made for the first time in October, in the year that Grandma Rosie died. Made because the rain was on the window and I was learning that you can miss someone and feel them near you at the same time. This is what you do when you need to feel less alone. She paused. Then she added in smaller handwriting in the margin, Oliver says it smells like safety. He's right. Part 9. The Christmas Recipe. December arrived with tinsel and cold air and the smell of pine from the tree they set up in the living room corner. It was the first Christmas without Grandma Rosie. Maya had expected this to feel impossible, and in some ways it did. There was a chair that felt empty even when someone was sitting in it. There were ornaments on the tree that Grandma Rosie had made. Little cross-stitched things, fat Santas and silver stars, and every time Maya saw them, she felt that old familiar weight. But she had a plan. She had found a recipe in the middle of the book that she had been saving. Rosie's Christmas morning cinnamon rolls. The ones that make the whole house smell like Christmas. The note beside the recipe said, "My mother made these every Christmas morning from the time I was 4 years old. When I grew up and had my own family, I made them too. I have made them for 53 Christmases in a row without missing one. Every year when I wake up on Christmas morning, the first thing I do is go to the kitchen and start the dough, because making them is how I begin Christmas. It is how I tell my family, today is special. Today we are all together. Today is the good kind of day. These are not quick. They take time. They require patience. You have to let the dough rise, and you cannot hurry it. But the waiting is part of it. Good things take time. The recipe was substantial. It required yeast, which Maya had never worked with, and a first rise and a second rise in shaping, and a glaze made from cream cheese and powdered sugar. It was the most ambitious recipe in the book. Maya told her parents what she wanted to do. Her mom sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the recipe for a long time. She made these every year, she said, every single year. I know, the note says so. Her mom looked at Maya for a moment in a way that was hard to read, but which Maya thought contained many things, sadness and love and something like pride, all mixed together. Okay, her mom said, but we're doing this together. Your grandmother's cinnamon rolls are no small undertaking. They started at 6 in the morning on Christmas Eve, so the rolls could rise overnight and be ready to bake in the morning. All 4 of them. In the kitchen, in pajamas, in the dark before dawn with every light on and Christmas carols playing softly on the speaker on the counter. Maya read the recipe instructions aloud like a captain charting a course. Her dad proofed the yeast, a step that involved dissolving it in warm water with a little sugar and waiting to see if it bubbled and foamed. It's alive, Oliver observed, watching the yeast do its thing. We're using a living creature. That's how bread works, Maya's dad said. Yeast is a living organism. It eats the sugar and makes gas, and the gas is what makes the dough rise. So we're farming, Oliver said. He was delighted by this. We're indoor farmers. Maya's mom, who turned out to know the recipe better than she'd let on, took charge of the butter and brown sugar filling, creaming them together in a bowl with a wooden spoon in a way that looked automatic, like muscle memory. "Did you make these with her?" Maya asked. "Every year," her mom said, "until I went to university. And then when I came back with your father, and then every year after. Except the last few, when she couldn't manage the whole recipe anymore." She paused, still creaming butter and sugar. "She'd call me on Christmas morning, though, every year, to compare notes. Was my dough soft enough? Had I remembered the cinnamon in the filling? What will you do this year?" Maya asked. "When Christmas morning comes and there's no call." Her mom was quiet for a moment. "I'll make the rolls," she said finally. "And I'll remember every year she called. And I'll call Aunt Patricia. And we'll talk about her." She looked at Maya. "That's how it works, I think. You don't stop talking about them. You just talk about them differently." The dough came together slowly and beautifully. Maya's dad kneaded it with great enthusiasm and considerably more flour than was strictly necessary. Oliver was allowed to knead it for 5 minutes and did so with the serious face of an artist at work. When the dough was smooth and elastic and alive feeling under their hands, they covered it with a clean tea towel and set it in the warm corner near the stove to rise. They went back to bed. But before she left the kitchen, Maya opened the recipe book to the blank pages and wrote, "First Christmas without Grandma Rosie. Made her cinnamon roll dough at 6 a.m. in pajamas with all 4 of us. Oliver said yeast is a living creature. He's right. Dad used too much flour. Also right. Waiting for the dough to rise." Then she added, "Smaller. It smells like Christmas already." She would have liked tonight. Part 10. Christmas morning. Maya woke before everyone else. The sky outside her window was that particular shade of deep blue that belongs only to Christmas morning. Dark still, but with a brightness underneath it, like the light was gathering itself before making its entrance. She went downstairs. The kitchen was cold and dim. The dough had risen beautifully overnight, doubling in size under its tea towel, plump and perfect. Maya turned on the oven. She turned on the kitchen light. She made herself a cup of tea. She had started drinking tea in October, partly because of the cold and partly because it felt like something Grandma Rosie would approve of. She got to work. Rolling out the dough was satisfying in the way that not many things are, the way the rolling pin smoothed it out into a long, even rectangle, the smell of yeast and flour and warmth. She spread the butter, sugar filling across the surface, added cinnamon liberally and brown sugar, and then, following a tiny notation in the margin, Rosie's secret, a little cardamom, a small pinch of cardamom. She rolled the dough up carefully, sliced it into 12 rounds with a sharp knife, and placed them in the buttered pan. Then she sat at the kitchen table and waited for the second rise, with her tea and the Christmas tree lights and the recipe book open in her lap. She read the letter from Grandma Rosie again. I will be there in some way. Not the sad kind of there. The warm kind. The kitchen smelled extraordinary. By the time the rolls came out of the oven, golden-topped, steaming, pulling apart into layers the color of caramel, the whole family had appeared in the kitchen, drawn by the same inescapable gravity that had worked on every generation before them. Maya mixed the cream cheese glaze, cream cheese, powdered sugar, a splash of vanilla, and poured it in slow, lazy rivers over the warm rolls. It melted and pooled in all the crevices, and the whole thing became something that no photograph could do justice to. Oliver stood in the doorway in his Christmas pajamas, hair on end, and breathed in very slowly and very deliberately like he was trying to store the smell permanently. Maya's dad stood at the counter looking at the rolls with an expression that Maya could only call recognition, the look of someone seeing something they knew from long ago. Her mom stood beside him. She put her arm around his waist. He put his arm around her shoulders. They stood there for a moment, just looking. She'd be pleased, Maya's dad said quietly. Very pleased, her mom agreed. They sat at the kitchen table. Before we eat, Maya said, I want to read something. She had her hand on the recipe book. Is that okay? Everyone nodded. Even Oliver was still. Maya didn't read the recipe or the notes this time. She turned to the blank pages at the back, her own pages, the ones she had been filling. She read the entry she had written on Christmas Eve. Then she read the entry from the soda bread day, and the shepherd's pie, and the first hot cocoa on the rainy night. She read them all. When she finished, the kitchen was quiet in the good way, full and still. You've been keeping records, her mom said. Grandma Rosie told me to, Maya said. In the letter. She said to fill the blank pages. Her mom reached out and touched the book, lightly, the way she had touched it on the first day it arrived. She would be so proud of you, she said. Maya swallowed. I'm going to keep going, she said. Every time we make something important, or something interesting happens, I'm going to write it down so whoever has this book after me can read it. Oliver raised his hand. I want the book after Maya. You have to learn to cook first, Maya said. I will, though. Oliver looked very earnest. I want to make the cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning when I'm old. Then I'll teach you, Maya said. The same way Grandma Rosie taught Mom. The same way Mom taught me. She opened the book to the blank pages. She uncapped her pen. She wrote while the cream cheese glaze dripped slowly and the Christmas tree lights blinked through the kitchen doorway, and her family sat around the table in their pajamas Christmas morning. We made the rolls. All four of us helped with the dough on Christmas Eve, and Maya got up early and baked them this morning while everyone slept. Dad said Grandma Rosie would be pleased. He's right. Oliver says he wants this book after me. I'm going to keep it safe for him. Part 11. What family means in 12 recipes. In the new year, something shifted. The rocks in the coat feeling didn't disappear entirely. Maya understood now that it probably never fully would, and that this was okay. But it changed shape. It became lighter in some places and more particular in others. It became less like weight and more like texture, like the difference between carrying something and holding something. She kept cooking from the book. She made great-great-grandma Dorothea's sweet potato pie in February for a Sunday dinner, and it was so good that even Oliver, who claimed not to like sweet potato, had 2 pieces and spent 20 minutes afterward denying that he'd had 2 pieces. She made the soldiers bread pudding in March on a rainy Tuesday, and thought about great-great-uncle James in France, about the baker who had been generous, about the strange and persistent way that kindness managed to travel across time and borders and wars. She made a bean soup from a page that had barely any writing on it at all, just the recipe and a single line. Made this the night before the trip. We were scared and excited. The soup helped. There was no name, no date. Maya didn't know who had written it, or where they had been going, or whether the trip had turned out all right. But she made the soup on the night before her first day at a new school. She had moved classes, which was almost as scary as a new school, and it helped. She added her own note to that page. Added to this recipe March 12th. The person who wrote this first didn't sign their name, and I don't know who they are. But they were right. The soup helps. She thought that whoever had first written the recipe would have liked knowing that. Spring came. The maple tree in the front yard turned green again, new leaves opening like small green hands. Oliver started a project for school about his family history and raided the recipe book for material with Maya's permission, taking careful notes in his round, determined handwriting. His presentation was titled, My Family in 12 Recipes. He stood up in front of his class and told them about Agnes coming from Ireland with nothing but a suitcase, about Dorothea making sweet potato pie for 53 years without a gap, about great-great-uncle James and the French baker, about his grandmother Rosie making cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning every year of her adult life. His teacher, who had been expecting the usual family tree project, sat very quietly for the whole presentation. Afterward, she kept Oliver back for a minute. She told him it was the best family history presentation she had seen in 12 years of teaching third grade. She asked where he had gotten all the stories. My sister, Oliver said. She has the book. In the last week of May, Maya sat at the kitchen table on a warm evening and turned to a new blank page in the back of the recipe book. She had been thinking about what to write for a few days. Not a specific recipe. Not tonight. Something else. She wrote, I am 10 years old. Almost 11. I have been keeping this book since October, when Grandma Rosie died and left it to me. I want to write down what I know so far about what family means. Not because I have it all figured out. I don't think you ever do. But because I want to remember what I know right now, before I know more and the right now gets covered over. Family is the people in your house. But it's also more than that. It's everyone who came before, all the way back to people whose names you don't know, but whose recipes you can still make. Family is the things you teach each other. Not just big things, small things, like how to test an oven with the flat of your hand, like how to stir cocoa in one direction. Family means you are not the first person to have a hard time. Other people in your family had hard times too. Big ones, like wars and crossing oceans. Your hard time matters just as much as theirs did. All hard times are hard. Family is sitting down together. Even when you're busy. Especially when you're busy. Family is the people who make you food when you're sad. And the people you make food for when they're sad.